Hello, I'm Rod Lindgren. This is my story of my lifelong journey in the martial arts. Part 6. The summer of '76 came along, and I have to confess, I missed a few days of workout. The Summer Olympics were on, and I was always fascinated by the Summer Olympics. So in those days, we didn't have a VCR, we didn't have catch-up, we didn't have DVRs, we didn't have any of that. So if you didn't watch it when it was being broadcast, you didn't get to see it. So I missed some workouts so that I could watch some of the Olympic competition. Another interesting thing that happened in 1976 that summer was I actually taught somebody something that they used to great effect. Back in those days, if you remember, I mentioned that my dad ran a JCPenney stores. Well, they had photographers. The Pixie Company would send out photographers to the different JCPenney stores across the country, usually during the summertime, and they would take portraits of children. There was an age limit as to how old the children could be, and because I was the manager's son, my age limit was not a problem. It took time to get those portraits. They had to do it in the summer. They shipped the film back to the company. The company would process it and print the portraits and send them to the parents in time for Christmas. She was a Pixie photographer. Her name was Patty. And we got to be pretty good friends. In talking with her, I discovered that sometimes she's going to be in a motel or a hotel, maybe not in the best part of town. She usually would get a motel or hotel close to the penny store she was working in that particular week. She would often walk to and from the penny store to do her shoots. So we thought, let's see if we can teach you something. So we spent about 30 minutes, and I taught her a simple hip throw, ogoshi, and she got it down pretty good. The next summer, she came back, and I saw her again, and she told me that she had been in some town and was headed back to the hotel from the penny store, and she walked past a bar and a drunk came out and started accosting her. She said, "Rod, I'm not sure what I did, but he ended up on the ground gasping for breath, and I was running to the hotel." Well, right there I knew that all my work and effort to learn this stuff and pass it on was definitely worth it. I didn't learn martial arts to become the baddest dude on the planet. That was never my intention. I just didn't want to feel helpless, and I wanted to make sure that other people didn't have to feel helpless too. So that was my first success. So we go back to school, and one day one of our green belts comes in, and he's got a bandage on his face. His name was Kurt. "Kurt, what happened to you?" He said, "Well, I was coming home from the theater through the park, and there was a movie theater and a park, and they kind of lied between the dorms, and the park was between the dorms and the movie theater. So I was coming through the park, and some guy jumped out of the bushes with a knife and tried to rob me. He slashed my face, so I kicked him right in the groin." He said the funny part is he didn't use a karate kick. He just punted like it was a football. Said all his training and so forth, I'm punting. And he felt kind of weird that that was what he ended up doing. And Woody was over, he was listening to it too, and he's just smiling. He says, "If it works, it's good karate." So Tommy-san and I became good friends, and we worked out together a lot. We did lots of things together, eventually becoming roommates. At one point, he needed some martial arts supplies. I can't remember exactly what, but it called for a trip to Michi Martial Arts Supply in Denver. So we hopped in the Mustang, the '71 Mustang, and drove down to Denver. And he got to meet Michi, and Sensei Aarons was in the back room teaching, so we got to observe the class a little bit and talk a little bit with him. It was a good trip. And on the way home, we're driving along, and Tommy says, "Rod, maybe next time we go down there, we could ask about getting some lessons from Sensei Aarons." I said, "Okay." To be perfectly honest, Sensei Aarons intimidated me. I was a bit afraid of Sensei Aaron's. I couldn't make him laugh. That was kind of what I did, to mix with people and make myself feel comfortable, was if I could make them laugh, then there was no tension. I could not make him laugh. And so I had misgivings about asking him for lessons, but Tommy-san wanted to do it, and I said, okay, yeah, we'll do it. Glad I did. Good thing Tommy-san was there. I never would have asked myself. We forged a great relationship with Sensei Aaron's and his wife Michi and their kids. One of the most influential things in my life was my association with Michi and Richard Aaron's. Well, Tommy-san and we started to do more and more tournaments. And Woody had a rule. He'd been observing things, and it's that there was a group of martial artists who were trying to specialize. They would only do kata, or they would only do sparring, which were basically the only two events at a tournament back then. Woody said, if you want to be in a tournament, that's fine, but you have to enter both events. We had quite a few places we could go for tournaments. There were tournaments in Cheyenne, tournaments in Casper, tournaments in Fort Collins, and Denver. And the furthest we ever went for a tournament was Colorado Springs, Colorado. And that was over 3-hour drive. Even in the 71 Mustang, it was over 3 hours. So we left at dark early, got down there in time to grab a bite of breakfast and get checked into the tournament. And it was a large tournament, so all the preliminary stuff was done during the day, and then after everything except the black belt finals was finished, there was a dinner break. So we ended up with quite a long dinner break and didn't know what to do, so we ended up going to Cinerama, I guess they call them IMAXs now, and sat down to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's a good movie, it's an interesting movie, but if you're tired, it's not where you want to be. We got really good naps before the finals that night. We had to go to the finals because we placed. I think we both won our kata competitions. We had to go back because they wouldn't give us our awards except after the finals. Another place in Colorado that we go often was Fort Collins, and it was interesting. In March, in Laramie, the trees were all still bare. There was no leaves, everything was brown. 7,200 feet. Go down to Fort Collins, and it's at least 1,000 feet lower, maybe a bit more than that. And all the trees were green. It was amazing. An interesting fact about Wyoming at that time, in the late 70s, according to the information I was given, the per capita participation in the martial arts was higher in Wyoming than in any other state in the Union. Right there in Little Laramie, Wyoming, we had a lot of martial arts available. One of our guys was Marv, and he also had a judo club. So occasionally we would go to Marv's class, and Marv would teach us stuff too, even in the karate class, because as Woody said, judo is a throwing art with strikes, and karate is a striking art with throws. The difference is one of emphasis. Other styles included, I'm not sure what the style was, but it was being taught out of the quadrangle. And a fellow who will become a little bit more prominent in this narrative was Tony Schuler, who was a student out there at the quadrangle. In the fall of '76, Mike Donnell, who was one of our green belts, was a broadcasting student and was taking cinematography. For his cinematography project, he made a documentary of Woody's Okinawa-te Karate Club. Being a senior student, I'm in it quite a bit, so is Tommy-san and others that you might recognize. He became one of our buddies, and we did a lot of stuff together. One of the things that Woody did about this time was he forged a relationship with another sensei, Douglas Hodges. And Sensei Hodges was I believe, 5th degree black belt in Kajikembo, and he was a 4th degree judo black belt. So he was a wealth of knowledge. He also had a fair amount of tournament experience. One of the reasons that Woody forged this alliance with Sensei Hodges was because Woody didn't have a lot of tournament experience, and he wanted to help the students that were doing tournaments, namely Tommy-san and myself. I didn't know this at the time. I only found out just a few years ago that that was the reason. At the time, I kind of resented Sensei Hodges' presence. I liked Woody. I liked what he was teaching. I was very happy just with Woody as my sensei. But I got over that, and I learned a lot from Sensei Hodges. It turned out to be a good thing. Now, I mentioned Tony Schuler before. He was in a class out at the Quadrangle, and in the course of time, his sensei died, and Sensei Hodges had taken over that class. So when Sensei Hodges started working more with us, a few of the people from the other class ended up joining our class, and it swelled our ranks a little bit, and Tony became kind of part of our little group. Another man that became well known to us through Sensei Hodges was Sifu Art Getlin. Art was the martial arts editor for Soldier of Fortune magazine, a magazine for mercenaries by mercenaries. As such, he was really quite a character, and we did quite a lot of things with him, and we had a friendly rivalry with him and his school and his students. One of his students was Joe Gould. Joe and I would compete against each other often in the tournaments. I would generally win kata. He would often win sparring. He was a really tricky little guy when it came to sparring. He'd know how to get in, get out, cover up. It was very, very hard to score a point on Joe Gould. So one time, Joe and I are sparring, and he catches me just perfect with a ridge hand to the throat, knocked me flat on my back. I got up and told him, "Nice technique," and we continued our match. Afterwards, the judge complimented us on our sportsmanship. Another man that came into the picture was a friend of Woody's from New Jersey. His name was Doug Gould, and Doug was a black belt from Woody's old class. When I met him, he taught us some Aikido techniques. Very interesting. I would love to do more Aikido. That's the one thing I haven't done much of that I wish I had. Timing is critical in Aikido. Timing and balance are everything. Another thing Doug did at a different date was videotape some of the katas, including a Jo kata and a Bo kata. I acquired those tapes from Woody. It's the old reel-to-reel 1-inch tape, and I got it digitized. So some of those videos are available on this channel. He broke down the katas set by set so that it would help someone if they wanted to learn it. It's worth checking out. That's the end of part 6.